Welcome back to Orange Hat Reviews, everyone. Hope you're all having a wonderful day. So, now that October is over and done with, and horror movies are staying in there in October, gonna be doing for November some movies that are actually more action oriented, but also movies that I really, really like. Movies that are, well, quite older. So, yes, the episode or today's episode is the hints that were given were Tommy Lee Jones and survival. Also, military and PTSD were the original hints given. So, this movie was done in 2003 and was directed with the director of, oh my god, sorry, I'm blanking for a moment. The Exorcist fame. There we go. The Exorcist was a movie that the director was well known for. So yes, this movie, or rather, the four movies that I have chosen, all include members of the military in the films. They are either former military or they are currently in the military. The theme of this is essentially military season, so to speak. So, without further ado, if you hadn't guessed the hints, Dan Blackroyd actually got it correct. The Hunted is actually the film that I am going to be doing. And yes, Vanja, you also guessed it a week ago. Good to see you. And Ruben Thomas, good to see you. And so, yes, without further ado, 2003, William Friedkin got into this movie, or directed this movie, and it shows what PTSD can do to a man trained to kill and do so very well. He was trained to do a job and he wasn't able to turn it off. He couldn't in time he lost the ability to differentiate between friend and foe when it came to certain situations. So yes, this movie stars Benicio del Toro and Tommy Lee Jones with Connie Nielsen of Justice League fame and Wonder Woman fame. And this is a movie that I absolutely love. The story is compelling, the action is great, and the acting, honestly, is perfect in my opinion, because Tommy Lee Jones absolutely kills it. Now, the opening scene has a narration by Johnny Cash. God said to Abraham, "Kill me a son." Abe says, "Man, you must be putting me on." God say, "No." Abe say, "What?" God say, "You can do whatever you want, Abe, but the next time you see me coming, you better run." Abe says to God, "Where do you want this killing done?" And God says, "Out on Highway 61. So then we are taken to Kosovo in March of 1999, and we see Benicio del Toro's character, Aaron Hallam. He is witnessing the slaughter there, the absolute mayhem and genocide of Albanians from from an invading regime. So yes, it was he's just watching people get lined up and just right down with AK-47s, where they do what's known as a sweep execution. They just throw them into a mass grave, and then they just shoot them full of freaking holes. They show a little girl get thrown, or her mom get thrown, and this girl has to witness her mother and several others get executed. They show some of the darkest violence in the beginning of this movie. This movie is almost on par with the violence of, or I won't say it's absolutely on the level of Saving Private Ryan, but with the brutality, with the absolute disregard for human life, this movie is on par with Saving Private Ryan. It gives you the shock of extreme violence, and then it tones it down a little bit for later scenes. It's actually quite well done. Now, Aaron Hallam basically is seeing all this death around, and it's the Serbs that are slaughtering the villagers. Hallam and his team are to take out their commander in a mosque. The way they move through is great, and in this scene, you see that Hallam is watching these soldiers slaughter these people. He has to. He has to not fire on these people or on these enemy soldiers while he's moving through, because their mission is to go in, neutralize the threat, get out without being seen. You can't make a spectacle. So, yes, he has to watch as people are being brutally slaughtered. And he gets through there. He plays dead in certain areas where he's just laying there to be dead as people walk by. This is as deeply violent as you can really show. The fierce, apathetic Black Queen, good to see you. How you doing? Always a joy to have you on or in. And Christian Freight's good to see you. So yes, when Aaron Hallam gets or is moving through, he's under orders. He was never there. He has to witness this. Feet from them. He is literally standing here. There is just right off the screen to the, or where my hand is where enemy soldiers are killing innocent people. To give you an idea of what this is all going, this is what's happening in the film. I'm giving it to you brutally and honest because that's what's in the film. And he has to basically watch to get through and slip through unnoticed. I mean, he crawls among the dead. And then when he gets into the mosque, he slips in unnoticed. Inside, he sees even more civilians getting shot or grouped up and then slaughtered. And he sees a little girl come in and grab a bloodied stuffed animal for some sort of creature comfort. Imagine going in among the dead, searching for some level of comfort, and a bloodied stuffed animal is all the comfort you can get at the time. So yeah, this guy who is the commander, who is the target, or the Serbian commander, is a very vicious little bastard, and he orders all the Albanians to be slaughtered. He gives the order. He's like, all of them are to be slaughtered. Leave none alive. That's the order. So Hallam goes in, slits the dude's throat several times, getting blood all over his face. And when he goes in, he stabs the dude in the throat, and then he just starts cutting several times into this dude's throat. To basically, this dude is not going to live. It is a very gruesome death. And Phil, TMNT, good to see you. Always a pleasure to see you. So yeah, when you see that this is the first step of Aaron Hallam's fall. He went in and he killed this man brutally. And that's how he was trained. This movie is essentially a cautionary tale of what happens when you train somebody so well. The only problem is they can't turn it off. Kind of like what Rambo says. You just can't turn it off. In certain situations, yeah. This dude has they refer to it as battle stress, not PTSD in this movie. And because this movie was done back in 2003, where PTSD was really just starting to get its bearings, when they changed it to PTSD later in that decade. So yeah, he gets the Silver Star for it. And as he's laying down with his unit when they're all sleeping, he can't sleep. He is hearing the screams echoing in his mind. This man is truly haunted by what he had seen. And Benicio del Toro's acting in this scene, it shows it. He is unable to really process it anymore. So the 2000s had great movies like Lord of the Rings and the prequels. Yes, they did. So we then cut to British Columbia, where Tommy Lee Jones is tracking a blood trail. And I really do like this scene. Tommy Lee Jones, when he plays certain scenes, especially military or some sort of character that is adjacent to the military, because he is not military in this, he is a civilian, but he is what I like to call military adjacent. He was brought in to teach people in the military, but he was always a civilian. I really do like how he brings a sense of wisdom into his characters, except for Two-Face, because he was just playing an insane bipolar nutcase in that one. But in this one, he just has a way of playing it where this is a man who is a survivor. He's a tracker, and he knows how to kill. He teaches people how to kill. He's never killed, though. This movie changes that at the end. And he's an exceptional tracker. He's tracking a white wolf that has a snare trap on one of its legs. And so he sees it and he's like, stepped on a snare, did you? And he digs out a plant, puts it in his mouth, creating a poultice. And he undoes the snare and then puts the plant that he's softened up on the wolf and lets the wolf run off. And then he goes back to the cabin where the hunters are. He's like, anybody here with the initials JW? And one guy, he's like, yeah. This yours? Yeah, it is. Wraps the snare around the guy's head and slams him face first onto the table. Sorry, I got a little bit of brain fart. Jet Sparks, good to see you, and good morning to you. And Fierce Apathetic Queen, he was actually, yes, he was in a World War II film. It was called Captain America, the First Avenger. He played General, can't remember his name, but it was a general. And he played a great character, too, in that one. Will Jones neuralize them if aliens are in? Yeah, he played that character well, too. I liked him in that one. Okay. In Men in Black. So, yeah, he assaults the guy that owned the snare trap, which was a pretty nice touch. So we then see in Silver Falls in Oregon, some deer hunters with some major scopes. I mean, these scopes are incredibly sophisticated. They're in the woods and they are hunting deer, or they seem to be hunting deer. Now, you cannot really tell whether or not they are hunting somebody or something. You see deer in the woods and you see them talking about he is down there and whatnot, but what they see in the scopes is Hallam stalking them. So it's kind of were these people, or was Hallam's justification for killing these two hunters, because he does end up killing them, justified, or were they just there to hunt deer? It does make you wonder, because these two guys were deer hunters on federal land, first off. And it really, I love how the direction and the story is written to where you can't really tell fully whether or not these people were actually there to kill him or whether they were just there to hunt deer. And he asks him, he's like, you hunt down, or you need those kind of scopes for those rifles? And he starts talking to him, the whole you're in the woods echoing and whatnot. And I really love how it's like, well, that's how you make sure they're dead. And he's like, when you kill with your own hands, there's a reverence. There's no reverence with what you do. And he then proceeds to hunt him. He's like, my knife versus your rifles. And these guys are like, okay. And he takes out his knife, does a nice little flourish, throws it into a tree, and basically letting them know that this dude can fade in and fade out really quick. And there's one scene where they show him running after cutting one of the hunters right in the face. He gets right up behind him, slices him in the face, and then he runs. And the way that they shoot it is he's running, and then suddenly it fades and he's further ahead really quickly when the other hunter comes out and shoots. So, Tommy points the finger. No, they were out to get him. Okay. That is an interesting take. And yes, but I do love how it is actually shown that however it is written, that you can't really tell the difference or tell whether or not they are there to kill the guy or they're there just to hunt deer. That's how well it is written in this film. So, in a sense, this is the movie's way of saying he can blend in really well, which shows his skill. The suspense of the hunt is well done, showing Hallam in a tree watching one of the hunters as they go by. Another hunter gets into a snare trap. Both are killed shortly after. I mean, this movie set up very well. And William Friedkin, who did The Exorcist, you can tell how this movie is cut and directed. You can see parallels to kind of how it was done with The Exorcist, which was, The Exorcist was 1978? What year did the 1973. So this was a movie that was done 30 years later, and yet you could still see a couple of parallels in the directing and the cutting, really. So yeah, it actually is this film is actually very well done by William Friedkin. Now, we get cut back to Tommy Lee Jones after Hallam kills him, or kills the hunters. And he notices government issued footwear when he's coming into when he comes into the cabin, and he's talking with his friend, and we learn that his name is L.T. Bonham, but people call him LT. He works for the Wildlife Fund. Also, we see that a government official is asking him to look at a file after they have a nice little talk, and he's talking to another guy, and then he says hello to the government official that's there waiting for him. He's like, how the hell did you know your tracks? And so he talks to him, and he's like, I don't do that work anymore. Which we don't see what's in the file when he's asking him. He's like, they only want you to take a look. So we only see him on a chopper looking at the pics, which are in the file. It's when he finally says yes that we see what is going on. These people, the two hunters that were killed, were drawn and quartered. They were sliced up. They were chopped up. Now, the FBI thinks it's a couple of killers with hatchets. That's what they're thinking. And it's like, that's hilarious. Now, he does choose to go back. So when he gets there, I love how he arrives. He gets out of He gets out of the freaking helicopter and just starts spewing. Thank God you don't see the spew. But yeah, she's like, "Are you all right?" No, I hate those things. I'm afraid of heights. But yes, we see Agent Abby, which is played by Connie Nielsen, and the FBI starts asking or going over their speculations of it being a Paiute ritual, and he knows better. He's like, Paiute or a Paiute won't chop a person up. I mean, well, what? Unless he was going to eat him. And we also learned that 2 other forest rangers were killed in Washington State. All sorts of trackers are out there looking for him. And LT has everyone fall back and call off the search. He then begins the search himself, noticing hides and tracks and one spent trap. He then notices he knows that it's one of his boys out there. He knows it is. And his fears are verified when he sees the hole in the tree that Hallam made with his knife. He immediately knows who it is. He lets the FBI know about him. He's like, it wasn't a hatchet. It was a fillet knife, or it was a knife with a serrated edge on one side and a fillet blade on the other. He wears about a size 10 shoe with no tread, kind of like a slipper, kind of like this one. And he shows the shoe that he has. This person is pretty damn skilled. And he tells him, he's like, and he doesn't tell them his name though, but he does let him know about him. And then he goes out by himself and he's like, "Where are you going? I'm going after him." Not alone, you're not. You ain't going to be able to keep up. And he's like, "Well, how do we know or how long before we go in? If I'm not back in 2 days, it'll mean I'm dead." So then we see the hunt between Tommy Lee Jones and Aaron Hallam, LT and Hallam. And he finds Aaron's hide, which is in a which is in a hollowed out tree. And I really do like the scene where where Aaron finds him, because Aaron's tracking him just as much as he's tracking Aaron. And you see a Bible with a picture of a woman named Irene, not Irene, sorry, Irene. So this tells you that Hallam did have a life, somewhat. The fight between Hallam and LT is pretty good. He's like, "LT," because LT immediately noticed once the lighting shifted a little bit, he knew he was caught. So he's like, or he stands up and he's like, "Do you remember me?" And he goes to shake his hand, but LT immediately goes on an offensive. He's like, "No, you taught me. I taught a lot of people." And so he shows him a little bit of what was taught, and he asks him, he's like, "Why are you chopping up these people? Do you see the scopes they were using, LT? They weren't hunters, they were sweepers." And he tells him, he's like, "You got to come in, son." He's trying to be nice about it. Well, Hallam won't hear that. He immediately draws his knife and goes after LT. And the fight choreography in this scene, in the movie itself, is extremely well done. It shows that these two have taken their job so seriously that it looks purely seamless. This is a fight that shows 2 very skilled combatants. And the knife, my God, I would love to get my hands on a knife like that, because that knife it's kind of like a shark fin, but it's also, let's see if I can actually pull it up for y'all. Aaron Hallam's knife. Yep. Alrighty. So yeah. Let me There we are. Now let me just share the screen for you all. Kabar, is it? Wing Chun like Kabar, is it? I don't know the specific fighting style that was used in this film, but I do like the knife. So this is the knife that he uses. And it's like, holy crap, man. I mean, yes, you could chop up a body with that thing. And to show you some of the other knives that they are used, they basically, or this one here is the different knives that were shown in the film. The first one here is the one that he had with him that he made earlier in his life. The second one is a rough shot make, and the stone one here is one that Tommy Lee Jones makes. They are, me, I would really like to get a knife like that because that is a great hunting knife. So yeah, Iron Helm. So enough sharing, and back to the yeah, they're just saying what fighting looks. Oh, the fighting looks like. It's definitely close quarters combat. I will say it's more CQC. So, as Hallam is fighting LT, we also see that he is aware of of other people around. We notice that Hallam notices this, and that's even before he gets shot with a tranquilizer dart. Excuse me. Because eventually he actually does get tranked by the people who tracked them. The FBI actually tracked them when Connie Nielsen throws Tommy Lee Jones a radio to track his position. So then we see that Hallam is brought in for processing and interrogation. And we see what appears to be deflection tactics, but it actually gives us a small glimpse into his mind. He mentioned, or he's like, did you know that, or why don't you tell us your name? He knows my name. He's pointing to the two-way mirror where LT actually arrives. And they're like, so why are you killing these people? Did you know that 6 billion chickens will be slaughtered by the end of this year? What's your point? What if there was a higher order in the food chain than us, and that species lost all respect for us? How would that make you feel? And then he's like, what do you want to talk to, or what do you want to talk to Bonham that you can't tell me? And so he starts mentioning, he's like, I want to talk to him about Operation Black Eagle, Mongoose, Cobra. And LT immediately comes in. He's like, shut your mouth. Do you want to get yourself killed? His name is Hallam, Sergeant First Class Aaron Hallam. And I love the reaction. He's like, so you do remember me, sir? You're talking about shit that never happened. They're recording this, bud. Good, then there'll be a record. Not that it will say anything you want it to, now will it? He's letting him know that even though there's a record of it, that record will be sealed in a heartbeat because of what he said, please, or just because of him mentioning the operations. You can't mention classified intel without putting yourself at risk. And believe me, it's considerable risk. It's called you're going to get locked up federally. So, we then see that the some military members of his, or one of his old units shows up. One of them's name is Dale, and he's talking with the FBI agent that's heading the case, and they explain to him, it's like, we really need you to take a look at this. And he's like, well, unless we are at war or you have an official writ, we can handle this. Well, it's actually the DOD, and they've come to take him into custody because this dude is seriously gone too far. Essentially, his military record is so heavily redacted, and his battle stress is so deeply a part of him, he can't even be tried or copped out as psycho. And we also learned that Bonham trained Hallam, trained him to survive, to kill. And he was contracted as a civilian trainer. His father was a tracker, and he learned it from him. And we also learned that Hallam is unusual. He can kill anybody without regret. Most of his victims didn't even know he was in the same room. Apparently, his last assignment, he went too far, killing his target and the target's family. His battle stress is impossible to reverse, and it is so deep-seated he can't be tried, and it is said he doesn't even exist on the official record. Then they show him being taken into DOD custody, and, well, I absolutely love how they explain it. It's like, he can't be tried in open court. He can't be tried in any court. This is essentially the government saying he is a dirty little secret that we need to keep under wraps. Otherwise, it could cause a massive problem with how our country is run. Cannoli Sasquatch, good to see you. And the truck shows me they were out to get him. The truck, they were there, or the government was there to kill him. Yes. The unit was there his unit was there to essentially kill him because he is now a threat to the United States national security. He has become a loose cannon that cannot, or they need the best of the best to kill this person. That is essentially it. The government created a weapon, and that weapon, or they expected that weapon to be able to turn it off, and he couldn't. And it's like, that's the problem, dude. You can't tell the sharks from the guppies no more. You've lost your use. You're skilled, yes, but what good is your skill without your intellect and your common sense and whatnot? It's because of what he has seen that drove him nuts. Also, he did mention earlier in the film, I should say this, he's like, you haven't responded to any of my letters. And the FBI, they're pissed off about losing Hallam. And so when he pulls out a nasal poison that you stick it up the dude's nose, push the button, it's painless. It's a painless way to go, apparently. Well, as soon as the other agent that's sitting next to Hallam, who is restrained, as soon as the guy moves forward like this, Hallam immediately is like, grabs dude, starts choking him out. Well, as in every bad movie out there, I mean, this movie does have some objective flaws. But the driver literally turns his head to look what's going on, and Hallam moves, and then the guy who's pointing at Hallam, after he moves already, full beat of a second, pulls the trigger. As the way that this is shot, you'd think that Dale, the guy that had the gun, shot the driver on purpose, because that's just how bad it was shot. Like I said, this may be a movie that I do like. It's one of my favorites. But I can acknowledge that there are some very bad shots in it. And happy day to you too, Happy Dinosaur. Good to see you. So yes, they cause a crash because the dude just plugged the driver in the head, and LT is getting ready to fly up to Vancouver and then drive out to back where he was, back into the woods. Well, he then learns that there was the accident that Hallam escaped. And there was that cute little scene where he's actually at the airport, and he sees these kids playing hide and go seek. He's just amused by it, and the little girl's looking for her brothers. So he's like, "Hey," and he's like, points over his shoulder. The little girl gets a nice laugh and finds her brother. It's a nice little scene, but when he notices the report, it's like, oh crap, here we go again. If you're talking so bad, it's good movie, check out Suburban Sasquatch. I'll probably check it out. So, or while he's, hold on one second. All right, so when he's driving up to the accident, we see the training sequence that Bonham gave. He's remembering his days as a trainer, where he's telling people killing, or when we train you, killing will be a reflex action. And you see that Aaron was, in fact, his best student. Aaron was the one that we see doing all the things that are being taught. He helps him make his knife. You overhear his letters to LT and how he can't keep doing this. I really need to hear from you, LT. Please write. He's essentially was calling out for help. And we also see the stone or carving stone knives and whatnot, how you take some rocks and you use chipping tools to chip out yourself a rock or a knife. So actually, if you're talking about the Sasquatch movie that Lance Henriksen was in, I saw that about a couple of years after it came out. I thought it was pretty good. So we then see, or he then tells them, he's like, now you have what you need, or killing is easy, or physically, or once you are physically able to kill, you have to be able to kill mentally. But the hard part, or killing is easy. The hard part is turning it off. And you see that, or Aaron Hallam watching this as he's learning. You also, if you go to Twitter and look at my live notification for this stream at the 10:30 tweet that I did, you see a clip of this training sequence where he is teaching him 1, 2, 3, 4, or 4. There's a 6-moment slice where that they show. I can't remember the exact, it's a 1 through 6 move, or 6 move cutting sequence. Yeah, our, hold on one second, folks. My mind's everywhere today. So LT arrives and learns that Hallam is loose. Hallam goes to Irene, the woman that we saw in the photos, and Irene doesn't want to see him. And she thinks that he was always lying about working for the government and whatnot. But Loretta, who was also knew Aaron from his time with Irene, who was Irene's daughter, saw him, and so it's like, okay, now that she is, or seen him, it's like, can Aaron stay for dinner and whatnot? And she's like, go do your homework. Don't think that you're coming back into our lives, Aaron. I don't even know what you do anymore. I told you I work for the government. Have you looked in my locker? How can I? You got like 6 locks on a damn thing. Well, the FBI is already watching them. And we also do see the previous night that Aaron takes out Loretta, the daughter, to learn a little bit more of tracking to show that he actually taught Loretta a little bit of tracking while he was around them the last time. And he's all right, I'll check that out, Happy. Yeah, I'll send me that link in Twitter so I can actually click it over there. All right, and I'll check it out afterward. But we see that he's tracking Squirrel, and that he tells Loretta about different animals and whatnot. It's a nice little scene. So then he's talking to Irene and saying, you need to pack your things and get the hell out of town, because they will come and they will burn this house down. And she's like, what are you talking about? So they're getting ready to leave because they believe Aaron. They don't know that Aaron has completely flipped out and has gone psychopath. He does have moments of lucidity, essentially, because of his battle stress being a part of his personality. He has a little bit of semblance of sanity. So when the FBI gets there and they ask, is he still here? And they're like, I haven't seen him for months. Well, obviously that's a lie. And he gets up, or he notices the tracks that Hallam left in the house. And so he goes up looking for him. And he sees him. He's like, and he tells him, come on in. Or he's like, do you care about these people, Aaron, or are you going to get them hurt? And Aaron asks him, he's like, are you here to sweep me, LT? You know I don't do that. You got to answer for what you've done. I got to live with what I've done. And then he's like, you could say what you want. I don't trust you. And so we then see him, he's like, if you cross this line, you better be ready to kill me. Essentially saying that Hallam will have no regret killing the one person whom he had any sort of respect for. Well, he then runs when the FBI, or when Abby shows up, and we get the car chase. And I love that when Tommy Lee Jones is running after the car, or Benicio del Toro, he's like, and just immediately, it's like, and continues driving. There's a couple of continuity errors with that chase where the front hood, because of collisions, the front hood buckles to go and bows like this. But then the next scene after he gets out, it's almost flat or perfectly flat. So it's like, yeah, that doesn't work. Doesn't work like that. I've never known an Abby that wasn't a buzzkill. Yeah. So then we see that, while LT and Abby are going through his locker, we see the silver star, a sketch of a knife, and a letter which emphasizes his insanity, which was addressed to LT. He's like, LT, those guys that you sent or trained to come and kill me weren't soldiers, they were robots. Essentially, that basically removes any doubt that Hallam is normal, or rather sane. So once they corner him in a construction area at dam, LT goes in to track him. The FBI go into the construction tunnels. Hallam kills the head agent and another one. There's some very bad CGI in green or blue screen where Hallam throws a knife into one of the guy's necks, and it shows him go like this and scream out and fall. It just is really bad how it shows it. It really is kind of weird. We then see a chase through Portland, and this chase leads to very different areas. A little waterfall area that is in like a park. We then see it out by the coast area where there's bike trails. It leads to all sorts of different areas. Also, it gets onto a train. And when LT shows up in the train, you also see Hallam holding the knife to a guy's throat, and he's like, "Let's keep this between us. Don't get in." And Hallam tells him, "Don't get in the way." Well, at this point, Abby is heading the investigation because the two other agents she was serving with, whom she cared for and were friends with, are dead. She's like, "No more. Shoot to kill." And Hallam then gets off of the train area and goes up the climbing areas of a bridge and then jumps into the river. Well, that concludes the investigation. Hallam has escaped. However, the FBI are going to continue to look for him. And I love how he handles this. He's like, "You can call off the search by the river. The tide caught him and he swims like a fish." And she's like, "We're handling this investigation." And he's like, "How many people are you willing to lose?" And she's like, "Excuse me?" "He will kill as many of you as he can. You better decide now what's an acceptable body count. You want more dead bodies, that's what you're going to get if you let these guys declare war on my boy. I made him what he is, and I can stop him." Well, she's no longer willing to listen. She keeps him part of the investigation, but he's essentially on his own. Well, we then see that Hallam is down by the falls and is in full survival mode. He makes it to an old dam area, and he fashions himself another knife out of scrap metal. When they make or show the knife or his first knife being created, they do or when they show the quenching of the heated metal, they do a cut to bring up the different or after the quench because they don't want to show the full time of the quenching. And it's like, yeah, but that's the more interesting part about it. It shows the full process, Heating and quenching is actually an important part of making knives and swords and axes and other things. But anyway, we also see that LT starts or gets into their survival mode, and he makes a knife for himself, or a stone knife. And then he goes on the hunt for Hallam. This is basically the climax of the film. They're in some woods again, and Hallam set up, or while he was there, he managed to set up several deadfall traps, a snare trap, and a hang trap, which all are triggered by LT. Then we get to the final fight with Hallam, and he gets there. I like how when he gets out of or cuts himself into the river, this is starting to sound like Rambo. This is essentially kind of like Rambo, but this is a character who cannot turn it off, who absolutely is irredeemable. Callum is safe. The FBI is useless. Hallam, not Callum. But yes. And the fight, which we see a lot of blood effects in this film, where when they cut, there's a big splatter of blood instead of normal seepage. That's they really do a good job with the exaggeration of certain elements. I mean, I'll tell you right now, if a person was to get stabbed through this area, just under the bicep, well, let me see if I can get some light here, or right in between the bicep and the tricep, your arm will pretty much take a massive amount of damage. Meaning, if your strength is kind of gonna be dwindling as soon as you pull the blade out, because Tommy Lee Jones's character does get stabbed through the arm. And I do like how they do close-ups of Hallam's eyes to show that this is a man that's completely devoid of any human emotion right now. When he is in battle mode, he is in his humanity's not there. And this fight is a brilliantly done fight. It's well choreographed, and it eventually ends up with Hallam being killed by LT just as the FBI is there to basically kill Hallam. They were essentially going to do, or they weren't going to arrest him, they were going to kill him, because they were talking while they were flying down with the chopper. He ain't gonna, or he's not gonna come in, right? And they're like, right. And they're cocking their guns and they're loading their guns and everything. So when they arrive and they see Hallam's dead, Abby is looking at or staring daggers at LT, basically like, you killed him, or he was supposed to be ours. We were supposed to kill him, essentially. But it's not said there. So after this moment, LT is back in, or small discernment of time later, LT's back in British Columbia, and he's reading the letters that were written by Hallam. One of them was partially read earlier, and Hallam wanted to stop killing. He wanted to get away from it. He wanted to walk, or he wanted to finally just be done with it. He was essentially writing as a call for help, like I said, but they were ignored. And it does make a person wonder, could LT have gotten Hallam, or could he have provided some sort of help for him? Or could he have helped in any sort of way? Or was he too far gone? This film does a really good job in making a person question that. And William Friedkin's direction is really up there. And so we then see him staring out and seeing the wolf that he helped running around the perimeter of the forest. And you hear again, Johnny Cash, God said to Abraham, kill me a son. Well, now you know why they had that specific readout. Because essentially Hallam was like a son to LT. And it's kind of the insane happening that was what this movie was. And then we get the credit sequence with Johnny Cash singing When the Man Comes Around. And I absolutely love that song. That is a great song. Johnny Cash is such a great singer. So, scoring wise, objectively, I would say that this movie is about, let's see here. I would say this movie is about an 8 or 7.5 to 8 out of 10. There are cutting problems. There's continuity errors. There's editing problems. Kind of like or in certain movies that Friedkin has done before, there's editing problems like in The Exorcist, where they say something, they don't take the beat, but they cut immediately. Where you see that is also prevalent in this movie. It's what I will call hurried or rushed cuts, which is indicative to they wanted to get this movie done quick. So, subjectively, I will say this movie is about a 9 to a 9.5 out of 10. It's not perfect, but I really do like Benicio del Toro and Tommy Lee Jones in this film. It really does show that they got down into the dirt. They learned the choreography for the fights. they were well dedicated to this film. And I really did enjoy it. It is a great action movie. Moviegoer, if you like these kind of movies, this is definitely a movie for you. If not, well, I will say that this movie is about a 9 out of 10 moviegoer. I really like it. It keeps me entertained. I watch it all the way through. I don't pause I usually will not pause this movie unless it's an absolute need to go to the bathroom kind of situation. The Hunted is really a movie that I recommend many people watch because it does kind of show what happens when you are a seriously gifted killer in the military for these kind of for the kind of jobs that require it, and what happens if you get too much battle stress and you can't turn it off. It's a PTSD story, folks. That's what it is, essentially. Anyway, thank you so much for those who tuned in. Vanja, Happy Dino. Who else? Cannoli Sasquatch, Kristen Freites, Fierce Apathetic Black Queen, Jet Sparks 373, Phil, goodness, thank you for stopping in. And Dan Blackroyd and Ruben Thomas, thank you all for stopping in. The hints for next week are, let me just pull them up. Solomon Grundy and autism. Those are the hints for next week. Solomon Grundy and autism. Now, if you know it, do not spoil it. Not in this chat, please. But if you do know, Vanja, I know you'll be contacting me with a couple guesses. But thank you so much for tuning in, folks. If you like this video, feel free to like, comment, subscribe, share, all that jazz. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. What did you think of the movie The Hunted? Did you like it? Did you not? Let me know all your thoughts, folks. And be sure to leave a like on your way out if you haven't already. And share the stream out so others can see it. This has been Orange Hat Reviews. Stay humble.